Welcome to Two Beards, a podcast and Wrexham AFC. I'm your host, Chris.
And I'm Adrian.
Please come along as we talk everything Wrexham AFC from an Australian fan's perspective. It'll be a blast and with nothing but cheers and beers. So raise a glass and come and join us. Hello and welcome to Two Beards, a podcast and Wrexham AFC. Have we got an absolute banger for you today? This is something else, and if you haven't already seen by the title of the episode, that we have the wonderful Mark Griffiths on board with us today, and he's joining us for a chinwag, as us Aussies like to say. Adrian, thank you for joining, mate. How are you?
Oh, mate, I'm beyond excited. When you said that we were going to get to talk to the great man, I was a bit in disbelief. He's got a bit of a cult following. And when I say a bit, I mean, he does have a cult following and we are definitely part of that cult. So to have him on today is pretty exciting.
Oh, it is. So, and Adrian, I know you're probably feeling a bit under the weather, but thank you for being here. This podcast wouldn't exist without you. So, we're going from strength to strength, and the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive yet again for the last episode. And I think we speak for both of us when we say that we are extremely grateful that we can bring you something different. So,
Thanks, mate. That was very, very, very kind of you to say. Yeah. A bit under the weather. Wife has COVID. Pretty sure I do. So it's just one of those things. But no, I would never miss it. Like Chris messaged me during the week saying, you should, you're going to be all right. These kinds of things, and I'm like, mate, I wouldn't miss it. I wouldn't miss it for the world. So, even if I was on my deathbed, I think I'd still probably want to talk to Mark Griffiths.
Oh dear. All right. Well, let's not keep our audience waiting. Let's get right into it. So, guys, I present to you Mark Griffiths. Some say he is the only man capable of saving a Paul Mullen penalty kick with just his voice, and that he declined the Golden Ball trophy because he already carries two around with him every day. Listeners, he is the voice of Dragonheart and welcome to Wrexham and the face of Disney. So fellas and Sheilas, raise a glass and let me introduce you to the one, the only Mark Griffiths. Welcome to the show.
Woo! Oh, good day. What's the good word? That's a hell of an intro. Thank you very much.
That's it. Trust me, he's been sitting on that for the last 24 hours, and he's like, I've got to read it to you just before I read it to Mark. You just tell me if it's all right.
That was beautiful. I've never been more flattered in my life.
So how are things over there, Mark?
Yeah, good. Hot, weirdly. We're trying to get used to this idea of there's not many clouds in the sky. It's very, very confusing. But yeah, it's okay, and it's exciting. I mean, the mad stuff going on around the club, evening close season, is quite something, isn't it?
Well, it's nuts. It's nuts, and especially down here, it's a following that's growing. Disney Plus is still something that is growing in popularity around Australia. It's probably more popular with the kids and the mums and the dads. But everyone I've spoken to that's seen the documentary are now at least in some point interested in Wrexham or have become full-blown fans like us. So that's why we've decided to do something a little bit different here and do the pod, and we're really grateful that you would come on our third episode. I know we're up and coming, so really thank you so much for that. It's greatly appreciated.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I mean, I've got to say, I've enjoyed listening to the first two episodes. They're really, really good. and it's good to see that, you know, Disney Plus now, you know, the Mandalorian's getting views now off the back of Wrexham Football Club. That's good to
Yeah,
hear.
exactly.
Yes. Yes, yes.
Well played. Well played.
Yeah, I'm almost just, you know, I keep my subscription to Disney Plus purely for Welcome to Wrexham. So I think I'm interested for the second season. I think it's going to be a really, really good season.
I wonder what's going to happen. Do you reckon we got a chance?
Oh, no spoilers.
I'll be happy your top 5, to be honest.
Yeah, that's it.
Forget the cups. Don't care about the cup. I think we'll do well to hold on to Mullin until January as well, quite frankly.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I can tell you that I'm in it a lot more, which is going to be worrying.
Really?
In my pod zone, recording stuff and recording us doing commentaries and things like that. So, yeah, that'll spoil it. That'll ruin it.
No, it won't. You know what, mate? We were thinking about this the other day. Like, sorry, like we were just saying, like the like people watch, you know, Welcome to Wrexham, and they see you. And I talked to a mate of mine who just watched it recently, and I said, "Oh, you know, we're going to interview Mark Griffiths," and he's like, "Oh yeah, you know, I heard his commentary at the Dover game," and I was like, "Oh yeah, that's quite a popular one."
Well, I've got to say that Dover game, I mean, it was sheer insanity. But the ironic thing about it is obviously they put the decibel meter on it. But I thought something they did really well was they kept Andy, who was commentating with me, his comment at the end, because I immediately, when it happened on the day, I thought, oh, this has got potential, social media potential. And I sent it to the club. And understandably, they trimmed it so it was basically just me screaming, and that went viral. But I sent it because I loved the fact that after I completely lost it, and it was just screaming and insanity, the moment it went quiet, he's very dry, Andy. He just like skipped a beat and then went, in case you're wondering, Wrexham have scored. Really dry. and the show kept it in, and I was really glad, because that was what I really loved, that I was there just being incredibly unprofessional. And then he was like quite sarcastically going, Wrexham have scored. And it was beautiful deadpan comedy by him. It was brilliant. So I was glad that was on the show.
I love that.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait to see what's coming up on this season, that's for sure. But I'm interested. How did you get into commentary for Wrexham? And like, because you've been doing it for a while now, obviously long before the takeover, and you know, you've been doing it for a long, long time. How did you get into it?
Well, stop me if you've heard this one before, but basically, I mean, I've always loved football. I used to dream as a sort of kid of being a commentator, and I know this is so sad, but I'm going to say I'm going to say it in public. Sometimes I'd watch a game on TV, sitting on the floor, and silently I'd be commentating along, and sort of like, you know, I mean, obviously sad but true. But then I saw a advert on the back page of the local paper, the Evening Leader. Well, not an advert, just, you know, they always had the back page is always the football. And then underneath there was a little paragraph saying Wrexham's Hospital Radio looking for new commentators to volunteer. And I thought, I'm not very good at pushing myself in. I come over as cocky, but I'm not really. And I'm not very good at pushing myself in, but I thought, I've got to do that. I've got to do that. So I wrote to them, I think, long ago. And they said, come to a game and watch what we do. And then the Mold Road stand then was a wooden stand with a commentary box on the top. So I went into the press box, that box, and the idea basically was I'd just watch, just to learn from it. And I have to admit, the main commentator really inspired me. He was sort of a local name from doing the hospital radio. He was about 80. He was old. He had a very thick West Wales accent. And he didn't bother to learn the names of anyone on the other side, and he would regularly describe them by their shirt number with mild swearing at the start. So he'd be there commentating, and he'd be going, "Oh, that bloody number 9's got the ball. Oh, he's giving it to that bloody number 8." And I sat there, and he inspired me. I thought, I could do that. This is within my levels of capability. I might even learn a couple of their names. So they gave me a go. I started doing it, Quite quickly, I was running it. I think it was a scam inviting somebody in to see if you dropped out on them as well. And then from there, I did that for years. It was quite a strange experience doing it on the wooden box because it was quite dilapidated. You couldn't open the windows. We had windows that opened up at the bottom, but they didn't open up. And so if it was cold, the windows would sometimes really badly steam up. I remember we got promoted in '93, and one of the big home wins were against Walsall, who were just behind us. Oh, we were brilliant. We battered them in the first half hour. We were 3 up after half an hour and won it 3-0 because the game was done. But it was brilliant. But I remember really struggling to see what was going on. And particularly I remember club legends Carl Connolly scored a goal from a corner early on at the Cop end. And I remember he had red hair, and I could see this flash of red, and then I think it was the ball going in, and every man was calling it as Connolly heads it in, thinking, I hope it was. I hope it must, passing turkey deflected it or something. I was right, fortunately. So it was quite weird up there. And then I started, again, the only other time probably in my life I've had the nerve to push myself in somewhere. The local radio station then was called Marcher Sound. And they had reports from the home games, but then for the away games, they basically would just get a journalist from that club or that town to do it. So if we were playing at Hartlepool, they'll get a local Hartlepool reporter to do the Wrexham report on top of those doing the home game. And, it was rubbish because they didn't know who we were and they didn't care. So their supposed reporting on us was, very limited. And I just phoned them up and just said, can I do the away games? And they said, yeah. It left me out of pocket because you get a flat fee down of 25 quid for doing it. And I'd make my own way there. But it was an excuse to get into all the away matches. It was an opportunity to talk to the players afterwards, which I didn't have in the home games, to do interviews. They didn't use the interviews, but I think, it was good for me to sort of get myself into that a bit. They were very limited. There's a lot of stories I could tell you about that, but one particular one was we went to Gillingham, who would be playing next season, and Gillingham's ground was, it was right in the middle of a housing estate, really old housing estate. It was proper ambush country, and often when they played sort of teams with a hooligan reputation, there'd be trouble. So Wrexham didn't have a hooligan reputation, and we're miles away from them. But I remember walking up to all the alleyways thinking, I wouldn't want to be, I'm going to have to be careful walking back up to the railway station through all this. And then went to the game. Quite a strange setup then, where their press box inside the stand, it was like a sort of an old semi-detached. It was really weird, like all old-fashioned carpets and narrow staircases, like you were going up to your nans. And it was like, I got in there. The press box was similarly decorated, and I was sitting there thinking, this is a weird experience. And then we had a Scouse lad called Steve Morris, who's a decent striker actually, and didn't make as much as I think maybe he was unlucky, I think, not to make more of himself. But he scored the first goal at the Gillingham end, ran straight behind the goal and ran along the Gillingham end, gave them all the finger. And they were going nuts. And I was thinking, this is going to get tasty afterwards. We scored another. They pulled one back, but we held on and won. And so I finished my job, finished the report, went out. And as I was leaving, the Wrexham team coach was leaving. And suddenly a big crowd of Gillingham fans just popped up from nowhere and started bricking the windows. And I'm like, this is interesting. I suppose I'm a reporter now. I've got a story. So, obviously I stood there and watched it all happening. Ran to a call box because no mobile phones then. And I phoned a radio station and said, right, I've got a story here. I'm standing here and I'm watching a bunch of hooligans smashing the Wrexham coach's windows with bricks. And the radio station said, thanks for letting us know. Have a safe journey home. And they hung up. And it was like, what is the point of this? All these commercial stations is have some content, which can be generic from anywhere, get the adverts in, content, adverts. Having something actually happening wasn't going to make them any extra money, so they just weren't interested. So that was an experience.
Sounds very
from
that Green Street Hooligans type.
It was odd. I mean, I'm not saying they've got that reputation now, but they certainly they played Millwall a couple of weeks before, and Millwall is an experience and still is. Millwall is your proper East End experience. I'm telling you, I've been there a couple, well, 3-4 times, and sorry.
I think that's actually one of the reasons why my parents actually moved me out here. So I was born in Coventry, as you know. I saw my little Twitter thread a while ago.
Yeah.
So I was born in Coventry, and they sort of moved out here for, you know, what they think was a better life. And, you know, my conversations with them over the years, they sort of said, you know, they're worried I was going to end up in the firm culture, and, you know, as a hooligan myself, they didn't want that for me. So it was, you know, probably one of the many reasons why they moved me over here. But I mean,
now look at you, mate. Now you are like a down under hooligan for Wrexham, so it's fine.
Yeah, pretty much. I got pretty pissed off at the Chester 125 when they bloody defaced that mural that was painted. I mean,
yeah.
I think, personally, you're exactly right. You're now a card-carrying cult member, aren't you? Ooh, I had to say that carefully.
That's a tongue twister and a half.
Started doing it and I thought, oh, this is a tongue twister. Oh, look at the word that's coming up next. Oh, hell. Yesterday I was doing teaching, because I'm a teacher, deliberate use of tongue twisters in Romeo and Juliet to create confusion with the other characters, and now here I am nearly swearing at you.
Well, if there's any podcast to do it on, Mark, it's this one.
But yeah, you're right. It's I mean, that mural thing though, I think there's always a few idiots everywhere. And as you know, I know this won't go down well with Wrexham fans, but let's be honest, the vast majority of Chester fans are absolutely fine. The vast majority of Wrexham fans are absolutely fine. You know, there's anger built up by awful behaviour by some Chester fans, but quite frankly, some of ours do the same back. So it's, you know, I mean, it was dreadful, but let's be honest, that's the nature of it all, isn't it? Whenever one or two people, that could be one person doing that, does something, we all instinctively pile on and want to blame that club and their fans, when probably certainly the vast majority of Chester fans would just be thinking, oh, how pathetic is that? They're dragging our name through it again. And we've got people who do that as well. Everybody, football fans just reflect society, don't they? In all honesty,
it's everywhere. And you can't pick it. Like we had, I don't know if you saw on the news, Melbourne Victory versus Melbourne City. So Melbourne City is my hometown club. And the goalkeeper, basically there was a whole thing in where he threw accidentally, a flare was thrown at him. So he threw the flare back. He didn't know that he threw it in the crowd. He was just trying to throw it off the pitch. And then the pitch was invaded and they had to stop the game. And the Australian media, they're just not used to that, the hooliganism that sometimes is part of football. But everyone, and it's so funny because like you said, Melbourne Victory fans, you know, they are the enemy in terms of derby ways. But like you said, majority of them are fine, and they would have been embarrassed by what had happened, and vice versa. Melbourne City was embarrassed by the goalkeeper throwing the flare back out. So I think it's incredible though that you can see now, like, and Chris, you could probably attest to this as well. Football is like, in a global sense in Australia is popular. People watch all types of football, but the A-League specifically in this country kind of gets put to the side. And it's because of this perceived hooliganism and something, but it's great to see, well, not great to see, but great to hear the other side of the world's perspective. And because, you know, it's been going a lot longer, and the rivalries are a lot more fierce, and you still have that same outcome, which is most of them are pretty good. It's just those one or two that ruin it for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, we've got over here, so we've got Perth Glory, which is our A-League side. That said, like, I watch them, but I don't. My heart's not there with Perth Glory the way it is with Wrexham and obviously the Freo Dockers, and you know, and I still have a little bit of heart there for Coventry as well. So, I mean, the thing that probably hurts football in Australia the most, I would say, is the advertising. It's not something over in Perth anyway. It's not something that's advertised very much. It's all about the Dockers. It's all about the Eagles. You know, it's
AFL.
Yeah, AFL and rugby and
rugby.
it's the only time that football, the popularity of it really rears its head is when it's World Cup.
Yeah. And when Australia gets through to the round of 16, once every 3 or 4 World Cups.
You get that every time, don't you?
Yeah, we've been
let's
pretty
not talk
lucky.
about what happens when you get there.
No, exactly. Go against Argentina and just get absolutely. Actually, to be honest, we only lost 1-0 to Argentina, so I wasn't too upset. But we still got played off the park.
And we should have beat Italy that year, but they took a dive. Let's just go with that.
Let's go with that. I remember that Totti took that pen, and everyone in Australia just enemy number one. And these are people who've never watched football in their life. They're just like, yeah, Totti, he's a dog. Like he's the one, enemy number one.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's so classic, though, isn't it? Of like how sport can be. In my mind, I think I divide things up a little bit between actual sort of proper sporting events supported by fans, like Wrexham, and then sort of events, sports, which is more like the Olympics is more of an event, if you will. People who get so excited about the Olympics. Would they watch athletics the week later? No, absolutely not.
Yeah,
and I would say as well that like rugby union's a bit like that here, where people get wound up by the Six Nations, but they don't get wound up to the extent where they're going to watch a club game. And that sort of thing is quite weird. The World Cup's like that, isn't it? Suddenly people become rabid fans of their national team and then forget about it for 4 years.
Exactly. Exactly the same here.
Exactly.
It's identical. Is there still, I remember years ago, there used to be a sort of, one of the problems that the Australian soccer teams had was that it was seen as a sort of immigrant sport. One of the teams was called, was it Melbourne, Croatia or something like that?
And, back in the day,
Yeah. Even Usain Bolt even tried out for Melbourne at one stage.
Yeah. But was it that it used to be seen as, well, this is not an Australian sport. We got our own sports like the football. We've got cricket. We've got rugby. And then football is like immigrants come in and form their little leagues. And is that a big, because I think in America there's an issue historically with perception, which I think they're starting as generations ago to get rid of. But does that happen in Australia, or is it still, that's a niche little sport? Sure.
It's funny, the actual A-League itself hasn't gone down that route, but you can see it forming in terms of like the previous, it was called what did we used to call it? It was the NSL, the National Soccer League, it was called. And you're right. Melbourne, Croatia who then changed to Melbourne Knights because they didn't want to be seen as, an ethnic based group. So they didn't shut out certain people. But the local leagues, I coach a local team here, and my club probably not so much, but there's so many clubs around that are, like there's an Italian club that we play against, a Polish club. And they're all like, it's very, very much like if you're Polish, you play for here. If you're Italian, you play for these guys. If you're Greek, you play for these guys. So it's quite it definitely is still a stigma. And I think in terms of Australian media, there's a stigma, but the actual league, the top flight of Australian football is kind of tried and I think succeeded in stopping it, but I don't think the media buys into it.
Well, it's very controversial over here at the moment because there's some noticeable differences. So A-League over here, there's no relegation. So if you have a shit season, that's just a shit season, And I think the whole allure of the English leagues and the the EFL is that there's relegation. Like you screw up, you have a bad season, your ass is going backwards. I think that's probably part of the allure of it. And whereas the A-League doesn't have that, they don't have the advertising. That they're structured very much like the AFL because they're trying to be very much like the AFL, and to the point where they're even the finals they're trying to put in Sydney, which makes no sense.
No sense at all.
There's they made this decision to move all the finals and all the final series all over to Sydney, which Australia is a huge country, and for people like myself over in Perth to fly over to Sydney, it's not a cheap endeavor.
No.
Not like not like we can hop on a flight to Benidorm for like $50 or £50 or whatever it is. It's it's expensive. And our airlines like to bump the price up whenever there's finals or anything like that.
Yeah,
just
that's
to
for sure.
really capitalize on it. So it hurts the fans, and I think that's where A-League is sort of trying to fight that uphill battle.
For
But
sure.
when there's something real, when there's some stakes that are on the line, like a World Cup, for instance, the Aussies will just come out in force.
Yeah.
Well, they've had a couple of Australian players play for Wrexham. I'm trying to think if there have been more. One of them is a sort of strange one in the sense there's a guy in the 60s, Dave Harding, who was a striker. He plays internationally for Australia. He only played a little bit for us, played 12 games, but he was in the 1970 World Cup squad. 70, 74?
Yep,
So
74, I think. Yeah.
He'd left us by then, by a long time ago. But nonetheless, he was the first sort of, well, no,
Wow.
one of the first Wrexham-connected players to actually go to a World Cup. I don't know if he played in the World Cup or not, but he like I say, he was in the Australian squad. And then more recently, in the 2000s, oh man, we had Danny Allsop on loan, and he was a
Danny Allsop.
god. Danny Allsop, oh my word, when he was a young lad, and
Yeah.
he was magnificent. Played 3, scored 4, glorious. But like I say, he only played 3 games for us on loan. We'd have loved to have kept him. We weren't in a position to be able to. Well, I don't think I think he was a young player developing. I don't think the idea was he's loaned out because he's surplus requirements. He was just getting experience, but he was good. He was terrific. So we had 3 pleasant games of him banging goals in for us.
Then obviously there's Kai.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Kai recently, yeah.
And certainly, I think okay, he didn't get on the pitch for us, but he was definitely a big part of the whole setup. And you need positive people in the changing rooms, and I certainly felt he was that. And looking at the celebrations now, he's at the heart of it. He was important to the club off the pitch in terms of making that mentality of us all being together. He's a popular lad. I've not actually spoken to him, but everyone I know who's spoken to him really liked him as well. So fans,
I hope he goes on and finds his feet with another club. He was always brought on, and even in the press release from when he was first signed, he was always brought on as sort of like a reserve type keeper. Like they never had any aspect of him being a first team unless it, for some reason the first Howard and Leighton both got injured, then he probably would have come on. Whether they would have went with Watson first, I don't know. But it seems like that's what he always was, and he probably knew that, and he was comfortable with it. And then with the way things have just shaped up with Ben Foster, it's just oh well, it's just it's football, isn't it?
Swings and roundabouts, right?
I mean, I think Kai was definitely, and like you say, quite rightly, he knew. He was like the insurance, wasn't he? And probably the way he'd get a game would have been if we've got 2 injuries, say Howard and Leighton are both out, that we might use one of the backup keepers in order to tide us over if we can't bring a keeper in time for that game, if you see what I mean. So chances are he probably would be used as a one-off emergency, but you have to have that keeper, otherwise you're throwing a youth team keeper in. And fair play, he seems to have made a good contribution.
Yeah, good on him, and all the best to him. All the best to him. I really do wish him the best for the future. Sad we didn't get to see him on the field, but he's a good bloke, and I'm sure he'll land on his feet at a club somewhere, and we may see him somewhere down the track. Maybe he'll pull a Ben Foster, and 20 odd years down the track, he'll come back and
be back when he's 40. Yeah. Top content creator / keeper signs for Wrexham in European Super League. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a feeling that Phil Parkinson might have let him go partly for my benefit, though. I've not, got nothing against Kai, but I could never quite get the different components of his last name either right or in the right order. So I knew there was a Calder, and I think there might have been a bank or a park, but I always think there was a Dale as well. And I have a Kai called a bank Dale, Kai Calderdale Park, Kai. I could never. So I'm quite glad I never actually had to commentate on him, because in the heat of the moment, when he saves Kedwin Scott's penalty, I've been going even more insane, because I just get fixated on, hang on, what's his name? And just some the program going silent for a bit. So I think it was an act of mercy for me, to be honest.
Oh dear.
I'm given one player at the end of every season that I'm allowed to pull the trigger on. No, that's not true. That's not true.
Could you imagine in your contract that's just like, you know what?
Right.
He didn't give me a good look. I said hello, he ignored me. So you know what? You're gone, mate.
That's it. Yeah. I kept saying his name wrong. So.
See you later.
So I mean, one of the things we were having a discussion about, and a lot of people ask the question, like, how has the takeover changed Wrexham? And we don't want to really go down that path, but growing up in Wrexham, has it been a town / city now, obviously, but has it been a town that's sort of, we have a town here like Fremantle, it's very much stuck in time, like a lot of history behind it, and a lot of has it been a town that's like very rarely ever changed? How do you find that now, and obviously growing up as a kid, to what it is today? Has it changed a hell of a lot?
It certainly has, but it is actually similar to what you're describing in Fremantle, except that unfortunately we don't have the Fremantle doctor coming in to cool us on these sweltering days that we have 3 times a year. It's not so much we didn't change as we deteriorated. So, I mean, I don't want to give you a history lesson here, but I mean, basic reason Wrexham's here. Firstly, market town. We're between Chester, the Cheshire borders, and the farms in North Wales, and so this was the convenient place people would come to trade for centuries going back, and we've always had markets. Brewery town, used to be loads of breweries, and when I was a kid there were a few, and some massive ones. Mining town, loads of mines when I was a kid, all still operating around the town, and steelworks. A huge steelworks in Brumble, where that guy. Oh, I've mentioned that on there yet, have I? I'll say it now. I was at the SCG. It was 2000. I went to a test match with my Wrexham shirt on, and a bloke walked up to me and said, "Oh, I Wrexham. My mate's from Brumble." And I was like, "Wow, it's a small world." But Brumble had a massive steelworks. So we've had all these traditional industries, and when I was a kid, they were still all gone now, except, well, Wrexham Lager's come back, but there was a good decade and a half of no breweries in town. I say markets, there are still markets here. There's been a conscious effort to try and keep the markets going, but it's not the same as now. There's a couple of nice little places like you can go and buy stuff, and they've been energized by the takeover, because now you see them producing football club related stuff, and I think that gives it quite a jump. A couple of the things that you'll have seen online, like people, local businesses selling things, are based in the sort of the biggest market now, including the I'm sure you remember about a year ago they were producing the Jordan Davis mugs, and that is a shop in the market. So
wow.
The club, what's happened with the club has re-energized the town, which, like I said, I would say has deteriorated. Sort of stayed the same but lessened. And I do say this a lot, so I apologize for repeating myself. But it's fascinating for me as a teacher, because in school, until about 2.5 years ago, kids, and I think I check out myself in this, and shamedly, are quite self-deprecating about coming from Wrexham. It wasn't an exciting place to come from. If you were going around the country, you might have to explain where it is, because if football fans know where Wrexham is, but that's essentially had become the one sort of marker whether you'd know us or not. But now Oh gosh, the pride. I mean, this is the town that Rob and Ryan chose. And so you see in the kids this sort of civic pride now. They're so proud to come from Wrexham. A parent, lovely parents of a fantastic kid. I was her head of year, and she left 3 years ago. And she sent me this fantastic email a couple of weeks ago saying that she's gone to university in Cardiff, and she's a celebrity on campus simply because she's the girl from Wrexham. You know, everybody just wants to talk to her about Wrexham. Whereas previously, when I went to university, I made absolutely no difference whatsoever that I came from Wrexham. You know, believe you me. And so it's genuinely that the self-esteem of this town has grown. I think the fact that there's lots of little boutique businesses sort of capitalizing upon it is wonderful. I think that, you know, I mean, obviously some of them might be infringing on the club's sort of image rights and copyright. I think the club's all right about that when it's local.
Yeah,
you know, when it's
good.
local people trying to organically represent what's happening excitingly at the club. Don't get me wrong, if you trample all over the copyright, the club will stop that. But I think the club's sort of fairly relaxed at the sort of things that help the community, and less relaxed about the fact that, you know, some people just jump on a bandwagon. They got no interest in Wrexham. I was looking on Amazon the other day, and I thought, what happens if you type Wrexham into books now? And I typed her in, and there's like, you know, a Wrexham quiz book, which looks really cheap and nasty. And when you actually click onto that, the actual author's page, you know, they've just produced that. They've done a Man City quiz book. They've done an Everton quiz book, and now they've done, you know, the Wrexham one. They're just looking for the next popular thing to capitalize. That sort of thing's nonsense. But the stuff that's happening in the town, and stuff like you guys, because that's genuinely coming from our supporters, that's just fabulous. And all it does is boost our confidence.
Oh yeah, we I don't know, me personally, I get a whole lot of this, you know, the Wrexham and Canada, or Wrexham in America. I hear a hell of a lot about that because the following is massive, and just seeing the spread of where the listeners come from on our analytics, it's quite, you know, evenly split between the UK and US. But you know, we hear a lot about that, but we don't hear a lot about, you know, your Brazil or your, you know, Australia, you know, other parts of the world. But that following is growing, and it's growing at quite a decent rate, and it's very passionate. And I think I mentioned it on was it the previous pod? I mentioned it on, like, a lot of people down here will support the Premier League because it's a Premier League, you know. And not a lot of people will be looking outside of those leagues. And it's a little sad because there's a lot of great football outside of the Premier League, and I think we just witnessed that last season with the National League, where I'm just like, I grew greys in my beard just from what.
Mate, before the season started, I had hair, and now look at me, like, it's just crazy.
Before last season started, I was an 18-year-old girl.
Oh shit!
To me, what we are doing now, I've never seen a football club do it quite like this for a number of reasons. But one of them is that what you just said made me think we are actually doing what the Premier League or the Bundesliga does. We are promoting a really interesting package, I don't like talking those terms, but let's do it anyway. We're promoting a sort of package that is attractive and draws people in, and yet it's just for one club's benefit rather than a league. So I understand why fans will just watch the Premier League, because it's given to you on a plate and it's really a good product. And why bother to say, oh, wow, this is fantastic. I wonder what Hartlepool United's like. You just don't, do you? Because this is great and this is the be-all and end-all. But we've done it for us. I mean, I know I love Spanish football. And I know that La Liga, see themselves as the natural competitors with the Premier League. And a lot of that, what the La Liga does, is aimed at trying to, they're a bit obsessed by it, I think, foolishly. And they sort of mimic the Premier League in some ways, but it just doesn't look as good on the screen as the Premier League. And they know that, and that's a big issue for them. And I know this sounds silly, but it's 2023. we look good on the screen. Our streaming's decent. Our Welcome to Wrexham, of course, is exactly what you want in terms of broadcast. It looks great. And that matters when you're even just producing little bits of content or hooking people into watching an entire series and then go a step further, is that it's Rob and Ryan have packaged it beautifully. If you look on our official YouTube channel, if you go back to about, let's say, 2016, 17, I'm editing the highlights. Our home games look great because we have brilliant camera people. I mean, Rob Stead, who's still in our media team, used to do the camera work then, and he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But our away games are often appalling because all we can do is take the other side's camera work and use it. And often it was the tactical camera. So it's panned out to show most of the pitch, so you can barely see what's actually happening in the game. And if you go back and look at the thumbnails I had to make, because then as well, we didn't have these amazing videographers and photographers that we got at the club who are superb. And I would argue one of the most important group of people in terms of popularizing the club, because it's not like you watch Welcome to Wrexham and everything else is just cheap and nasty looking. It's all really great content. But before that, I'd have no photos from the games and I'd have to make a thumbnail by taking a screen capture of a moment from the video. And if the cameras were back, miles back and open, and they were recording it on low definition because they didn't need to be able to see, the managers need to see where the players are, nothing more than that. Oh my word, some of them are dreadful. I remember we had a great win at York, and the screenshot of that, you can just about make out that the Wrexham player celebrating the only professional goal of his career is a person and not just a sort of green blob. So that's what we were working with. And in that sense, it's brilliant to see it jump forwards. But yeah, we're marketing our club in the way that a league markets itself. And you're right. That is fantastic, I think.
Yeah, I think honestly, when the Notts County game happened, and that was literally the first time I'd seen, this National League mentioned on our news shows, all over the news,
all over it.
Up, it was on the project. Like there was a lot of news shows talking about this game and how big it was. And we watched it live. I even watched it with my mum, who's also a supporter now. I watched it with her, and I've never ever seen my mum just get so invested and just really into it. Like she came out like an absolute tiger. I was like, what the hell? And that's the exposure that obviously it has. And it was the conversations I've had with people at work that there's seriously great football and football clubs outside of the Premier League. You don't have to follow the zeitgeist just because it's Manchester City or Manchester United, one of the big six. You don't have to follow them just because of that's what they're bringing in. Have a look outside the leagues. There's some really great games. The story behind Luton and the Coventry Luton playoff was amazing. And
excellent.
Another game that had I've lost about a year of my life off after watching. It's just so good.
Oh no, you go, Mark.
Well, as I said, while I commiserate about what happened in that playoff, it's going to be fascinating to see Luton back up in the top division. I mean, partly, this thing I would have said about Coventry as well, that both those clubs, when I was a kid, I would have seen as natural top level clubs. It'd be nice to see them back after what they've both been through. But Luton as well. I mean, I love the fact there's a fair amount of reporting here about their stadium. Yep. And quite right, it's the most wonderfully idiosyncratic stadium, and they are eventually going to move out. They've been talking about it for decades, but Luton Kenilworth Road is an experience, not least. Right, I've never been in the away ends because I've been in the press box, but my dad used to come with me to all the games, and he'd go. He remember telling me about when you go the away entry for the Luton ground. it's completely hemmed in, the ground. If you see an aerial picture, by tight rows of terraced houses and a railway line, so they've got no room to expand at all. And the away end, the turnstile to go in, is just like, it's right in the middle of the terraced houses, and this is like house, turnstile, house. You'd walk past it. It is really bizarre. And my dad said when you go into it, you go up this sort of winding little rickety staircase, and suddenly you're looking straight into somebody's bathroom, because it genuinely is. That one of the houses has been converted into a turnstile, and then when you go up, there's bathrooms either side. You just suddenly walk up, and let's hope they drew the curtains. That sort of thing.
You know what? If I ever come back to England, I'm gonna buy a house right next door to that. So you just
Yes.
stand in the mirror, in the window, just like
in the shower, just
all
watch
my
the game.
glory showing.
Well, like the thing about that place is like, and
First
you were
glory,
saying
isn't
like
it?
it's all over the media. It's all over the media here as well.
Yeah.
But like, so supposedly the Premier League has like rules or regulations around how the stadium has to be, right? I'm actually panicked for them, because the people live there. What are they going to do? Evict them? Like, I'm not sure what's going to happen.
Well, I think, as I understand it, the regulations they'll have to meet can be met by making some in-ground adjustments. But they have, I mean, for decades, they've genuinely been actively seeking new places to play and failing. And apparently are looking at ways to expand, but genuinely it is so hemmed in, you'd have to be creative. But they have apparently got a site now, so they are going ahead of building a new stadium, which, I don't know. The soft romantic in me is sad about, because, Kenilworth Road, it's just, those idiosyncratic grounds are so much more fun than the sort of, identikit grounds that you get where you're not quite sure, am I in Walsall or am I in Wickham? They all look about the same, except for the colour of the seats, But I also got to admit, I've had some memorable experiences at Luton, insofar as, a couple of the best away days ever. Say Luton are a bigger club than us, really. They've won the League Cup, or what's called Carabao Cup now. They've won that in the 80s. We played there once, and admittedly they had a little bit of an injury crisis. It was in League One, and we beat them 5-2 at Luton, and it was just so, it's one of those rare games where you turn up thinking, this is going to be tough. And then after about 25 minutes, it's like, we've won this. This is easy. And the aforementioned Carl Connolly scored a hat-trick. Future Wrexham legend Andy Dibble was in goal for Luton, poor bloke. And that was great, but not as great as my one most glorious moment ever in a press box. Because we were playing Luton, and again, League One, but they were in decline, and they were bottom of the league, and they looked awful, and we were doing all right. We were aiming for the playoffs. And so we went there optimistically. At half-time, we're losing 3-0. And so everyone in the press box is like, what? The Wrexham ones are astonished, and the Luton guys are really astonished because they've never seen their team lead like this. But honestly, I really felt that although they were winning 3-0, I felt that we looked much better than them. It's just we missed our chances. They had pretty much 3 attacks and they all went in. And so I declared loudly in the press box, we will win this game. And everyone laughed at me. And we won 4-3. I was just everyone was thinking, having suspicious looks at me then and seeing if I was getting onto a Singaporean bookmaker. But it was just so obvious we were so much better than them. I thought, I can still see you scoring 4 goals past them in the second. And we did. Oh, it's beautiful. Happy
Did you have the same kind of reaction to the Dover game? Did you feel like you were, when we were down there after like being up and then being down again, did you feel like we could do it?
I don't want to answer that question. I think there was a point in the second half. Well, let me say, one of the things that really struck me about it was how brilliant our support was. Because there was a point in the second half, I've got to be honest, where I thought, well, this is gone. We lost this.
Yeah.
And the crowd didn't act like that. And in the past, I felt Wrexham fans can be a little impatient sometimes. But it's a lot of it's frustration for being in the National League for so long. We know we ought to be somewhere higher and we can't get out. But once that team started to gel and win at home all the time, there's an amazing relationship between that team and that crowd like I've never seen. And there's a real shared confidence of, we'll be all right. You know, this is what we do. We win when we come here. And there's a real sense of that. And I thought at 5-2, there's only like 20 minutes left. 20, and I'm thinking, well, there's no chance that we can come back now. That's that. But the crowd didn't. The crowd kept going. And when Palmer scored the first goal, back to bring it to 5-3, I was thinking, well, I suppose we could scrape a draw. But the crowd really got going, but really did. And Palmer wound them up. He was running back with the ball, and the crowd really went electric. And I thought, although having said that, maybe,
maybe,
and it was
just maybe.
Once it went to 5-4, I was expecting us to win, to be honest.
Yeah.
Even though I think that was like last minute, there's bound to be a lot of added time, and they were just stuck in their penalty area then. I mean, having said that, it's still amazing when we actually get the winner. But but this is a team that gives you confidence, and that's not something I've been able to say previously as a Wrexham fan. I've often said that I've often started the season hopeful, but I started this season for the first time ever expecting success. I expected us to win the league because this team gives you confidence like no other team ever has for Wrexham. Even the great teams, you're still going to have to compete to succeed. But this one just felt certain. I mean, the miracle, and the thing that will make the second season of Welcome to Wrexham even bigger than the first series, is that amazingly Notts County kept up with us and gave us a competition, because it wasn't for them, we'd have won the league by February, March.
Yep.
It would have been great, but not exciting.
No.
With hindsight, I'm delighted they did what they did. And indeed in the Women's League as well. The Connors Key Nomads pushed the women's team, because they'll be featured more in the second season too.
Well, that's good.
Good. So they should.
Absolutely.
Well,
actually,
just touching base on that, I think Luton is going to be a good sort of, I guess, marker for Wrexham with what they're going to go through going up the leagues. And especially being into Premier League and having a stadium which is a little bit smaller than the Kairos. It's I think, obviously when the new COP is built, and we go to what would it be, like 17,000 capacity?
15.5 it'll be.
15.5.
Wow.
So of current Prem teams, we'd be bigger than Luton and Bournemouth once we got that built.
Yeah. So I think
so good.
I think it's going to be, even though Wrexham will be in a slightly different position, I think it'll be a good marker, to see what Luton are going to go through in the Premier League next year, and then for us to then go ahead and work our way up through the leagues. I mean, I expect us to only really spend one season in League Two.
You hope, right?
I hope. Well, geez, we got Ben Foster now, so let's just go up in one season.
Good. That's good.
Yeah, I think the championship will be a lot harder to get out of than maybe League One or League Two.
For sure.
But it's going to be the backing that Wrexham have is just exceptional. So it's a good yardstick, and I'm super excited to go on this journey with Wrexham, and continue to listen to guys like yourself, Mark. Like I started off with ask Wrexham, and that you actually answered one of my questions.
So we're like real fanboys, Mark. We're real fanboys. So we were so nervous that Chris texted us during the day, being like, he's like, how you feeling, mate? I'm like, yeah, good. T-5 hours,
I'm just a big love. You don't have to worry about me. That's what the kids say about me in school as well. I mean, to give you a measure of how everyone should be intimidated by me. You've ever read of Mice and Men? I've taught it a billion times, and I still love it. Actually, to be fair, it's a great book. But the bit where Lenny has a fight with Curly because Curly thinks that Lenny's laughing at him because he's being humiliated, whereas actually Lenny is just totally in a world of his own, thinking about rabbits with a smile on his face because of a previous conversation. So Curly attacks him, and I realized that I'm a bit like that around work. I wander around with this dokey smile on my face because I'm thinking of something that happened 10 minutes ago. I don't even realize it. And I was so flattered. The kid came up to me and said, "Oh, sir, you know, I like the way you smile all the time." And I was, "Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it." And I thought, actually, I didn't realize I do that. I
Well,
am just lennying my life. I'm just wandering around. You know, they'll think, "Oh, isn't he cheerful?" I'm just thinking, rabbits.
well,
You know?
I think it's safe to say, Mark, that you've got a bit of a cult following here in Australia.
Oof, oof, for
Yeah.
sure, for
Man,
sure.
you wait till I
Every
start showing you my neighbour's credentials, then you'll really, I'll be massive down under then.
Well, the question I would actually have was like, so League Two comes in with, I guess, new rules, regulations, things like that. Does that affect how you go into next season in terms of commentary? Or does it affect anything for broadcasting for international or local?
I think most of it's been put out there now, how it will affect things. So it'll be good for international in that I follow setup, the Wrexham player setup,
Yep.
will be able to stream the games internationally. In Britain, we'll still be subject to the 3 p.m. blackout between 3 and 5, although there is pressure to stop that now.
Right.
But certainly at the moment, next season, that will still apply. But those restrictions shouldn't really apply internationally. So thankfully, our international fans should be getting good and uninterrupted coverage of streaming. The commentary will still be on Wrexham Player.
Yeah.
There will be restrictions, but then there'll also be opportunities. I mean, for example, the reason we went on to Wrexham Player during last season is basically to make sure that we familiarize everybody with it, because if you can go onto that platform if you're not in the Football League, but it doesn't make money for you. But if you're in the Football League, you're immediately getting cuts of the big broadcast deals, including a cut of the Premier League deal, interestingly.
Wow.
They give payments to the Football League to distribute. So we'll get a chunk of the Premier League mega cash. But also, iFollow basically is set up to monetize your material for you. So we'll make decent money, as I understand it, out of being on that platform. So that's why the club wanted everyone to be familiar with that. Because once you get into the Football League, that starts cashing in for you.
Right.
A lot of the things, I mean, I've said this, my go-to phrase, National League in terms of broadcast deals and rules, absolute cowboy country. I mean, and partly because National League is really run by a small group of chairmen who are only looking after themselves, and then a small group of administrators, and I mean small. I mean, I have had it explained to me as an office with a photocopier in it is what runs the National League, and
Wow.
they often fall behind the times, and sometimes they sort of willingly fall behind the times. I think sometimes because like I said, you run by clubs, they may have agendas, and it's a certain type of club whose owner will want to be on that board rather than aiming upwards into the Football League. So, I'll leave that there. But there are some rather old-fashioned approaches that they have, and sometimes that was good. So sometimes it meant there were no rules restricting us from doing things. That was great. And then otherwise, it drove you absolutely crazy because there should have been rules. I mean, to give you the classic example, Boreham Wood came up. Boreham Wood, aside like we said before about hooliganism, Boreham Wood are a club with loads of great people in it, but run by a bloke who's not so great, I would argue. And they came up, and then they sent a letter around saying anybody who wants to commentate will have to pay £200. Anyone who wants footage will have to pay £300. That's not how football works. We welcome the other side's club's commentators in, and then we get the same from them. It's a no-lose situation. We give the other team our footage, they give us their footage. That's just how it works, obviously, But they said that, and it was we didn't commentate from there for a couple of seasons because we just objected. But we'll avoid all that sort of nonsense, hopefully.
Tell us.
Avoid.
I read a story about something involving you, a flag, and some scaffolding.
Really?
Yeah, when one of your commentary stories.
Didn't go full King Kong, did I? Oh, hang on, is that the roof coming off?
Yes, that's all.
That was the race course, though. So you're talking about primitive conditions. That was the racecourse. That old wooden stand I talked about before. Oh, geez. It got condemned, but they still allowed us to go on the top. I mean,
oh man.
and so we were on this. It was condemned. Oh my gosh! Oh, you sparked me here. There was always a big stink about the fact that it was condemned, and there were always about 200 people down the bottom of it. You couldn't see them from pitch side, but they were basically all blagging and getting in because there was the area for the St. John's ambulance people who would, give medical help was by there, and people were able to sneak in via there and like hang around. So there was often a big hubbub of people like in this sort of open concourse who managed to get in for free. And then the stand was derelict. The commentary box was an absolute death trap because the roof was flat, because the roof was where the TV cameras used to go. So it was a metal flat roof. Well, they weren't maintaining it because it was derelict. So water was running down the sides of the walls of our commentary box. We got electrical stuff wired into the walls. The floor had a carpet on it and it rotted away. So there were only mostly the floor was just the beams supporting the press box, but you couldn't see because the carpet was there. So it was like a minefield. You'd be walking in and you'd step and go, oh, my foot's going through the floor. Okay, right, yeah, that's solid. That's how you'd come in every game. And then one match, we played Sweden, Wales playing Sweden in a friendly, and the flagpoles were on the roof of the press box as well. So you got the Wales flag, and that was sensibly sized. The stand wasn't as big as the current World Road stand, so it was sensible size. The Swedish flag, sensible size, but for some reason, UEFA sent this enormous flag, which was like the sort of thing you'd have in these big Eastern European concrete bowl stadiums, So this sort of flag you see at Banik Ostrava. And it was immense. I remember going past the ground the day of the match, the morning of the match, and there was no wind. And this huge flag went all the way down the outside of the stand and halfway across Mold Road, which is a dual carriageway, because it was so big. It was ludicrous. Those cars driving over the UEFA flag, which of course now is a beautiful metaphor for what they've turned into. But never mind that. You sort of playing this game in this bizarre situation, and then partway through the match, the wind got up and caught the UEFA flag. And I swear to you, I am not exaggerating. It was like being in a United Airlines plane taking off. Suddenly, the press box just went whoop and tilted backwards. And you're like, whoa. The flag was trying to pull the roof off the stand, which was derelict and not well maintained. And not only that, but that press box wasn't as well connected to the roof of the stand as it used to be. And you just think for a second, I just thought that, the headline, teacher killed as stadium flies into housing estate. I thought, what a way to go, And luckily the wind died off. It settled back down. And naturally, being British, stiff upper lip and all that, chaps. We just carried on commentating and then carried on there for another year and a half, despite the fact that we were clearly sitting on a ticking time bomb.
Off health and safety would have had a field day.
Oh, yeah. It was so different then, and the club had run so differently where lots of stuff went on the club didn't realise, and the communication was terrible. And one summer, I went in just to check the press box to see if it was still usable, and the whole thing had been boarded up, but nobody bothers to tell me. So thanks, football club. That's how it used to be, So that was it. And so we couldn't commentate for a couple of years because we just didn't have anywhere to commentate from. It was weird times. Weird time, but fun.
Fun.
Well, I'm glad you'll be staying on commentating the games next year and hopefully the year after that, and maybe one day we'll see you on the Premier League broadcast doing some commentary.
I'm too rich for their blood. I know it's a cash-rich league, but they're going to have to go some to match my fees. Believe you, by that point, I'll probably own Disney. That's what I'm thinking.
Yes. Oh, geez. Speaking of which, like, what a in person that do you get to like see Rob and Ryan very much?
A little bit. I've probably said this. So please stop me if I'm just repeating stuff I've said before. Ironically, I'd never seen a Ryan Reynolds film when the takeover happened. I have now. Obviously, I knew who he was and how big he is. But my family, we're all massive Always Sunny fans. So that sort of blew my mind. And even now, people will say, "Oh, I haven't seen this TV show. Oh, but Ryan Reynolds, And we were always the opposite. We were like, "Oh my God, it's Rob McElhenney. Serious? That can't be real." So I met them for the first time when they came over for the first time, but only briefly. They were basically the day after that Maidenhead game, their first match. They came up to Wrexham, and we were doing some media stuff, and they were being shown around. And basically, that was, as you can imagine, running late because it was such a huge deal. But Rob, fair play to him, he knew that some of the media team were up in the stand, and they were hoping to come up and say hi to us. And because they were running late, he just split himself off to run up and say hi to us, and that was really nice of him, And he does listen to the commentaries, definitely. Ryan does. I know Rob has been from the very start, and he said he often does what a lot of international fans do and sort of puts the commentary on while seeing the stream. I couldn't believe that. That really got me excited, to be honest with you. The thought,
So good.
the way he described it was him and Caitlin and the kids playing of Lego while my commentary's on, and I thought, oh my God, that's insane! I can't believe that. So for me, because you see, the thing is, because I'll do the podcast after the match and things like that, and then tidy everything up. I'm not at the moment really much involved in the post-match stuff. By the time we've finished, the stadium's empty and pretty much people have gone. So we've often not really had much of a chance to pop down to see them, but we have done occasionally. And it was great at the celebrations on the pitch after the Boreham Wood game, because after the pitch was cleared for this trophy lift, we were given bibs to go down there, and well, we were helping to control it because we didn't want photographers to be going into areas they shouldn't. But also, it was just to give us a chance to be on the pitch and experience that, and then going around with the players afterwards was brilliant. But I had the oddest little moment where, in front of the tech end, I suddenly see Luke Young and I, our eyes met across a crowded penalty area, and we were both mad, and we both ran and we hugged each other. But then, as I started to hug Luke, over his shoulder, Rob McElhenney was standing there looking at me with his arms out, going, "Whoa!" And I thought, "Oh God, you can't push Luke Young under the bus. He's a flaming lovely bloke and he's a legend, but Rob McElhenney wants to hug me." So I managed. Thankfully, Rob recognised he should wait his turn before getting a bit of griff. But it was brilliant. So I put the picture on Twitter because one of the photographers got it of him and me. There's both with astonishment in their eyes, going, "Whoa! Look what's been done." And we got a few of us, the commentary team, we got a picture of Rob and Ryan as well, and the trophy, and it was fantastic. So no, they genuinely come across as lovely guys, and it doesn't surprise me, but they genuinely are. They really feel sincere in what they do and feel, and they feel it as well, and it's lovely. And we all know that Rob was the initiator and is obsessive about it, and Ryan's come into it, and you can just see, and I think Welcome to Wrexham reflects that well, just how he's fallen in love with it all. I was realized week in, week out, that actually, this is much better than I actually thought it would be. I thought it'd just be a fun thing to do. No, this is obsessive. This is addictive. You can see that in him. It's fantastic, I think.
Well, I remember that game very well. At the end, when that game actually ended, and I was watching the pitch invasion, and like jumping around the room, me and my mum watching on the big screen TV, and we're jumping around the room, having a great old time. And then I looked over and I saw Rob and Ryan, and the shot of Rob, tears in his eyes.
Yeah.
I like to think I'm a tough Aussie bloke, but that friggin' broke me.
Yeah. Same here, mate.
Oh, I was just to see what it means, and I was like, this guy, he just gets it. He understands it, and it's clear for the world to see just how much he's invested into this club, like it's in his blood. Yeah,
and I think like the reflectiveness, like you said, just how that shows and embodies what I guess what they're both going through. But like now you see, people who didn't even like sport in general, and like I have a very good friend of mine named Joe, and he's a great bloke. He's never been interested in sport ever. Like I'm sports obsessed. I love everything, but talking to him, and he watched the documentary, but then he watched the basically the game of the Boreham Wood game, which again, stupid hours of the morning, 3 a.m. I think, something like that, and him seeing that and him getting excited, emotional, that's what gets me going as well, is like not just what Rob went through, but like what other people are experiencing. It's crazy. But then also seeing, the locals like you, and like for seeing those visions, getting choked up thinking about it. But it was a very, very good telltale of what embodies Wrexham.
And I think as well, Adrian, you're right, because I've had a lot of contact with the American, Canadian supporters, because obviously they're closer and some are able to come over. And both through that and through social media, the really constant thread is people saying, I got into it because of the TV show, because it portrayed a community. It wasn't really about the football. And then they've got into the football by either hooking into the commentaries or hooking into the stream. And but that gateway drug, if you will, of the TV show actually is a show about people, not about football, I would argue. And that's what's drawn people in. And I think it's also, I'm going to sound very arch saying this, so I hope it didn't come out wrong. I think it's why so many people who interact with us are really good people. I think it struck a chord with people who enjoy seeing other people being happy. And it struck a chord with people who like that idea of community and society. Famously in British politics, Margaret Thatcher says community or society is dead. It's every man for himself. But no, it's not. And it's brilliant seeing people helping other people. It's brilliant seeing people being happy and sharing that with people. It's brilliant seeing people's lives being enhanced. My life's enhanced by it all. I love the football club, but I obviously wouldn't have stopped following them if we stayed in the National League or lower. But my life is now talking to fantastic people like you, so doing crazy things that I never, ever thought I'd do. Having people constantly coming up to me and saying, it's brilliant what's happening to you, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah, it's massively life enhancing. It's not just my football club's going well. It does something fantastic for my life. And that's what's drawn people in, that it's a good people story. And
absolutely.
I don't want to make Rob and Ryan sound cynical. They're intelligent in recognizing that this is what will work. I'm out very early on, Ryan saying sport is storytelling. And I just thought, someone's finally said the thing that's in my head all the time, that it's not just about the sport. It's about, but these guys beat them last year and it was controversial, and now they're going for revenge or whatever. And I think in a way, often people for years have said to me, how do I keep calm at the games? I know I go nuts when we score, but generally speaking, I think I try to stay sort of even-tempered, and I am even-tempered by nature, and try to give both sides of it as best I can. And I think the honest reason is because I do see it as a bit of a soap opera. When we're doing badly, it's like, okay, so this is like a bad part of the story, but then it will improve a bit, and I think that allows me to see a bigger, longer picture. I'm lucky to be able to see it like that rather than just go nuts when we lose and start crying.
Just like Neighbours, hey?
Just like Neighbours. Just like, if you remember when Henry came back to the house and there was a Dear John letter from one of his many girlfriends who dumped on him over the years, saying, "I've shot through," and he was like crying, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is awful." And I was like, "Oh God, but there'll be another girl for you, Henry. That's how soap operas work. It'll be okay."
There'll
And I
be
learned
another.
from that. I mean, no doubt that girl then, I don't know, fell off a cliff. But then, you know, there'll be another one. Someone else will bob up and it'll be fine. You know? Yeah, neighbours.
Its name is like, that's so funny. Something I never got into.
I grew
I
up
feel
on the Bill, EastEnders. Oh yeah.
See, I watched those with my mum because my mum was born in Scotland. Like, you know, that UK TV was a channel, or is still a channel here, right? And it was something we would watch, you know. But you know, people go, oh, you know, especially, you know, people from the UK say to us, you know, do you watch Neighbours? And I feel terrible because I've never seen an episode in my life. My friend, my friend's in Neighbours right now. She's an actress in Neighbours right now, Candace, and I still haven't watched it. Like, I just feel terrible.
Gone public with that now.
Yeah, that's it.
In the 80s, when it sort of landed, I mean, I got to be honest, it was partly a sort of it became a sort of cult student show.
Yeah,
you know, where you kid yourself that you're being ironic when you're watching it, but really you weren't. Really, you were using that as an excuse to have your guilty pleasure and pretend, "Oh, I'm laughing at this." But it was quite. It was shown here at 12:30 and 5:30, and so the bar I went to university in Liverpool. The bar would be packed at 12:30 with all the students, like a pantomime. You know, Mrs. Mangle would come up and they'll be boo, you know, and everyone's trying to shout smart remarks at it. And then in the evenings, I went to university. The first year was 89. I was considered extremely upper class. Don't tell Che, because he thinks that, you know, the whole middle class thing is his domain. But I was quite fancy because I had a black and white TV in my room, and people were impressed by this. There was unbrought TVs. And so the frustrating thing was, ironically, you could get the Welsh channels clearer than in North Wales, in Liverpool. And so the Welsh channels put it on an hour later. And there were 2 servings for dinner in the halls of residence. So everyone would pile into my room at 5:30 to watch Neighbours, but then a new group would pile in at 6:30. How was I going to eat? So I just left my room unattended for an hour when I went for my dinner, and but my room would be packed out of all these people, you know. But you know, I feel that through that and cricket, I've picked up a reasonable amount of Australian slang, and I love language anyway, and I enjoy talking to kids about dialects around the world or around Britain. And I assure you, the Australian bit of that, the kids really enjoy. But
yeah, I'm having a bit of fun trying to learn the Welsh language at the moment. It's not an easy language with the letters. I think I might have stuffed it up in the last episode when I was talking about
Pontypridd.
Huh?
Pontypridd.
Yeah, did I say it correctly? Please tell me.
I'm a very diplomatic man. You nailed some of the other ones, to be fair. Pontypridd did stand out a little bit.
Nice.
So the Y is an sound, so Pontypridd. And the double D, the double D is a letter on its own in Welsh. So it's D and then double D, and when you say the alphabet, and double D is the best I could describe, like a TH sound, like V. So Pontypridd.
All right, I'll remember that when I'm.
My wife is first language Welsh, so if you need any hints, I'm sure she'll also throw.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Did you by any chance have a? Let's call it a Rob moment after the Bournemouth game? Did you, when you go home and no one else is around, did it sink in? Did it hit you and, you know, bring the feels up?
You know, I thought it was moving before when you said that it actually moved an Australian to cry. I thought only your cricket captains cry, and, well, you know, Steve Smith. I'm old enough to remember Kim Hughes crying.
I was going to say Steve Smith. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. At least he didn't do the Boris Johnson, Donald Trump defense of I was caught red-handed. What did I do? I mean, to be fair to him, he didn't do that.
No.
But I don't think I did. But that's such a boring answer. I feel I need to make something up for you.
No, we want the true Mark Griffiths. That's what we want. So
That's it.
I would say that I think if that game didn't have so much riding on it, I'd have probably been slightly less drawn into it and have been able to sat back and realise earlier, oh, we've won the league. This game's done. Because they weren't coming back at us once we went to 3-1. And I would never tempt fate, but you can see in a game, okay, there's some odds going to have to happen for them to come back into it. But I genuinely, it occurred to me that we won the league 10 seconds before the final whistle. I was looking at my stopwatch and there was 10 seconds left by the time. They had a long throw in. And I just suddenly hit me, well, if they score from this, that'll be full time. But we've won. And that was the actual point where in my head, I didn't say it, but in my head, I thought, oh, we've won the league. Oh, that's good.
That's nice.
My favorite thing about that, when that whistle went,
yeah,
and you just see the ref just book it, just absolutely leg it,
runs
like I'm getting out of here.
Someone should have recorded that. Like, should record it because he's gone to the Olympics. That ref for sure. Like he bolted.
Yeah.
He was Usain Bolt-esque. Like,
we used to put a GoPro in a tunnel to record the sort of players coming out, and it'd be brilliant if we'd done that. Just to have something. It'd be like one of those found footage things of ghosts, wouldn't it? Like a security camera. It sort of films an empty tunnel, and then suddenly there's a bloke sprinting through with his arms up in the air going. My favourite bit, we used to get some quite nice coverage of the GoPros, but my favourite bit was Mike Fondop, who you remember played against, got sent off against us for Oldham, who played for half a season for us, a peculiar player. And it felt so on brand for him. Now, I'll have to find it. There's one of the tunnel cam ones where we sort of attached it to the side about 6 foot high, and it's obviously there, and he just walks straight into it. He goes, whoa! It's just beautiful.
That needs to be released.
Yeah. Oh, it is out there. It's somewhere on YouTube. I can't remember which game it was.
Oh gosh.
I did have a moment. I've just realised after the game. I've never done this. I don't see myself as overly demonstrative, although I accept what my behaviour is. But after the game finished, and I'd been there quite a long time afterwards because I'd stayed obviously with the celebrations on the pitch. Then I went up and I had to tidy up all the equipment. I left it all up there, and that took quite a long time. And also CNN, we were the first story on CNN Sports Show at 10 o'clock. It was a live interview with me. So that was pretty insane.
I was looking everywhere for that footage. I was looking everywhere. When I saw you mention it, I'm like, I got to see this. I got to see it.
Got to find it. Yeah.
I think I'll have a look. I think they published it. If it is, I'll send it over. I've got a copy of it, but I guess I haven't really got the rights to publish it. I'll ask them. They were very nice. They were really good to work with. They were brilliant.
I just want to see it just personally.
Personally, just a personal thing.
Well, obviously, I wouldn't distribute stuff illegally. Now, would
no.
I could accidentally, I suppose, press a button.
Oops.
Yeah, do the lot during commentaries. But I'd finished, and it must have been midnight-ish, something like that. And I'm thinking, oh, it's all kicking off. And I'm not going to go and join it. I'm knackered. I've got to go home. But I don't know. I had this weird desire that somehow I had to do something out of the ordinary. And so I got my car. And when I got onto the road down into town, I wound the windows down, turned the speakers up full, and it's a new car, so I didn't realize how good the speakers were. They were very good. And I just played We Are the Champions and drove slowly down with the windows down. And it was great because people, obviously, you can imagine all the pubs were spilled out into the pavements and people were all waving and honking their horns and stuff, and that just felt good. So that was my out of character moment afterwards, just doing that. I just thought, wow, that's something that's not something I do.
No. I love that so much.
The next night, it didn't go as well.
No. Okay, now the mural. What happened to the mural now makes sense. Like it was a provoked. It was a provoked thing.
That's it. It's my fault. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I'm not trying to say this to attack Chester. I genuinely, I lived in Chester for about 10 years, something like that. It's a beautiful city. The thing is that it's not a football city. There's a suburb to the north of it called Blacon, and really that's the hardcore of their support. If you go into Chester, you don't really see much evidence of football, or Chester certainly, and you don't you know people now, you do occasionally see people with Wrexham stuff on in Chester, because in town it's quite middle class again, and it's also quite touristy. Lovely place. I mean, I love Chester as a place. It's fantastic. But yeah, you don't get much sense of Chester fans roaming the streets. Whereas Wrexham is now, especially now, it's all Wrexham badges and things in the windows. There's loads of businesses that take advantage of it. There's a chip shop about half a mile down from me that have a car all decorated with their chip shop name, and they have a Wrexham badge on it. And there's a few places, there's a couple of places like that who, they park their car somewhere prominently in town with the Wrexham badge on and their name. There's all that sort of stuff going on.
Is that like Wrexham's version of the Binley mega chippy?
Yes, well, don't get me started on chippies. I was when I was a student, I was the official fish cake commissaire for Liverpool. All fish cakes had to get passed by me. So there is and I would, anyone who comes to Wrexham, I would recommend, if you want fish and chips. I'm sort of slightly speaking to the wrong audience here, because I know from having been to Australia that you also can do fish and chips, to be fair to you. But certainly for Americans, Canadians, it's a slightly more unusual thing. There's a chip shop which is right in the centre of the town, which is really good. And it's quite idiosyncratic opening hours. And the story about it, which I wonder if it's true actually, was that it was the bloke who owned it was wealthy and kept it going just because he felt like it, and the quality is brilliant, and it just closes when you wouldn't expect it to sometimes. But it's a lovely, it's a good chippy, and it's either Evans's or Jones's, and I always get mixed up which Welsh name it is. It was there during the Second World War. My mum used to tell me my aunt would go to the outside there, and when all the American GIs would turn up in their jeeps, they'd all throw money to my aunt and her friends to buy loads and loads of chips from that chip shop, because it's been there so long, and then take them to them, and then they'd let them keep the change and stuff, or give them some gum. So wow. Yeah, it's been there for a while.
Well, yeah. don't you like there's this, like us Aussies, yeah, we love fish and chips, but there's one thing that the UK does that Australia doesn't do so well, and I can't quite figure out why. That's the curry dipping sauce for the chips.
Oh, yep. It's not done here at all.
You can't. It's just not the same. There's something different about the curry up that I don't know, but the dipping sauce is just. I'm longing for the day when I get to come back and just chow into some fish and chips with some curry dipping sauce and just have flashback to when I was 6 years old in Coventry, and I long for that day. And I think that's something we're going to have to do when we come up there at some stage.
When you come over, I'll show you. There's a chippy right around the corner from where I work, where they have both that, and they also have their own house curry sauce, which is more Chinese curry style, a bit more onion in it. And both of them are outstanding. Oh my god! So yeah.
I love that.
I'm getting hungry just thinking about it.
Yeah, my god.
A lot of Welsh people would claim the curry sauce thing to be a Welsh thing, by the way. I don't know if that's true, but a lot of Welsh people say curry sauce and chips is originally more of a Welsh thing. And you don't see it as much if you go, say, London down south. It is quite interesting. I'm sad, different. But you get these little weird regional variations. And the cool thing is that, football has been my teacher.
Yeah.
So I've gone to so many places through going to Wrexham away games, and I always want to see a place. I don't want to, if I can, just go to the ground and come out again. So I often go by train, and I've always felt it's quite nice that I've got most sort of decent sized towns in Britain. If you mention them, I have an opinion of what it's like, because I had the chance to travel because of the footy. And you do see little peculiarities with foods or different things like that, which is quite fun. Up north, Scotland and like Carlisle, places like that, they do battered haggis with your chips. Oh, that's a heart attack in a paper bag, I tell you. It's amazing.
Yeah, I kind of want that.
Well,
Like, I
Mark-
mean, my origins is Scotland, and like black pudding and haggis I have had, but yeah, I feel like it's not the same here either. Like that's another thing that's just not the same. Like you go to the butcher. I had a really good butcher who was from Glasgow actually, and they did great black pudding and haggis, but other than that, when you get an Aussie on it, it's just not the same thing.
It's not the same.
Black pudding's widespread, but it's a northwestern thing, really properly.
Yeah.
But it's lovely.
Oh, yeah.
The trouble is, kids will say they love it, and then you explain to them what it is, and they're like, "Whoa, I don't like that anymore."
Yeah.
Haggis genuinely, really south of like the borders, you don't really see it down here.
Wow.
It's very peculiar to see it any further down than that.
So I gotta ask you. This leads into a couple of questions.
This is good. This is good. This is good.
Bovril or beer?
Oh, well, I mean, you see, the point is that, all right, I'm not a big sort of chugger of beer. I like to enjoy good beer, so I do love good Belgian beer or stuff like that. I won't just have loads of it for the sake of it. Bovril though loses out simply because, as I'm desperately trying to spread the word in the commentaries about this, Bovril has a specific situation where it's the best thing on earth, and if that situation is not fulfilled, it's horrible. So you've got to be in a football ground, and it's got to be really cold. Not even, oh, it's a bit nippy today. And I genuinely, sometimes I'll sit in the commentary box and I'll think, oh, should I have a Bovril? And I'm genuinely weighing up, it's only cold. It's not, will it get really bad? It's got to be properly cold, so you need warming up. And then it's the greatest thing ever. I got Bovril at home, and it's just not the same. You just can't. I'm not saying it tastes different, but it's just, you've got to be freezing cold in a football match. You've got to be.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, what about
beer wins there, I think, to be fair.
About I'm not sure if this is your thing or not, but penguins or Tim Tams?
Right, now then, penguins, the biscuits.
Yep.
Now, Tim Tams, I'm not sure I've ever had a Tim Tam.
Okay, no, we're going to change that. We're going to send.
Yeah, we're sending you some now. Like literally, you know what? Overnight shipping. That's it. I'm getting it sorted. I'll go. I've got some in the cupboard, mate.
Yep. Just DM me your address. We're going to send you some Tim Tams.
Send you some. Don't worry about it.
I mean, obviously, I've been over a couple of times to Australia, and I've tried to indulge in the local culture. And if I can say something that really interests me, is the idea of using the cooling slots in the top of a pie to squirt tomato ketchup into it. Yeah, well done. I mean, congratulations. Speaking as the man who invented mixing HP sauce with baked beans, at least I think I am. That's good. That's a good move. I enjoyed that.
Well, on that note, I think we're going to have to say goodbye to you here, because we've been going for a long time, and I can't thank you enough for just taking the chance to come up on our new pod, and it means so much to us. So Mark, thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. It's an honor. I love what you're doing. I'm desperately want to encourage you to keep going, because it's just another new voice, and it's fantastic, and a new angle. And I've got to say, Chris, Adrian, you're brilliant. And our club grows because people like you see what's special and jump in with both feet. And so what you're doing, to me, embodies why this club's on an upward trajectory. Two guys have come in and done an amazing thing for us, but it's people like you jumping in and actually committing and getting tattoos on yourself.
Oh yeah, well that's my wrong one. That's my.
There you go. There's a bit of Welsh for you.
It's disappearing.
I mean, that sums up what is really amazing about this club, and so thank you. It was an absolute honor. When you invited me, I was thrilled. I've got to say, honestly.
Well, we will hope to have you back at some stage too.
Definitely.
I think that would be a definite. We'll put you down to come back at some stage, and we will definitely get your details and send you some Tim Tams.
For sure, 100%. That's a given. Also, Vegemite and the lot. Like, you're just gonna go nuts with that.
Yeah. I've had Vegemite, fair play. And I'll send you over Laszlo, the podcast and Cat's fee card, because I was quite surprised he hasn't come in. He normally does when I'm in. He's obviously thinking, what's the exchange rate?
All right. Thank you so much, Mark.
A pleasure.
Thank you, Mark.
you.
Really appreciate it.
Wow. Holy shit. Oh man. What a guy.
I'm just in. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm lost for words because I never shut up, but at the same time, I just can't get over how awesome that was. And I think we just made I think we made this joke when we met on virtually for the first time. But that meme of, Will Ferrell being like, did we just become best friends? I'm pretty sure I just feel like that, segment of that movie just embodies what we just experienced with Mark Griffiths right now. And I feel like I'm his best friend now. And this is the best, this best feeling. I'm riding on the biggest high right now.
Oh man. Mate. I don't know. I'm just so thankful for him that he had so much time to give us, and
so much time.
I mean, we're only 3 episodes deep, and for him to come out and actually support us and recognize what we're doing, and that we're trying to grow the fan base here in Australia, and and to a lesser, to another extent around the world. I'm just. Some of those stories that he had, I could have listened to him all night long, man.
I didn't want it to end, mate. I did not want it to end. And when you ended the podcast, I looked at the clock like, hey, mate, we just started. What are you talking about? And I looked at the time and I was like, oh my God, that's when when it's like time flies when you're having fun. That felt like a blip because it was I was just so engrossed. And to be honest, to be very mindful is to be in the moment. And we, as a society, we're pretty rarely in it. We're talking on our phones. We've got Twitter open. I didn't do any of that shit. I was completely in, and my eyes were not my eyes. I don't think I even looked at the camera once. I think I looked just in Mark Griffiths' beautiful blue eyes and just didn't stop. And I'm like, I feel like a giddy, I just feel giddy. I'm just very happy.
Just get drawn in, and he has so many stories, and
yeah,
you know what, I think we'll try and get him back on here again, to tell more stories, probably over, maybe before the season starts or over the next season. We'll have him if he's got enough time. But I can't thank him enough for that. It was just amazing, and it's an honor to go through this journey with you, Adrian, as well.
No, mate, it's honor to me. Honestly, just an honor to have guys. I think I mentioned in the previous one, but just to reiterate, this man does not stop. Chris works so hard on this podcast, and the time, even the money that goes into it as well. He is fully invested. I'm fully invested as well. But he just inspires me. So, mate, Chris, what you're doing, thank you for doing it. Again, we couldn't be two beards without the other beard. All right, so thank you.
That's right. Well, so we got the red beard and we got the panda beard.
Panda beard, I like it.
All right. Well, look, we're going to end this podcast right here. Go out on a high. Okay, so we have our song of the week, and this week we are throwing it to Free Fade. She's makes a lot of good sort of techno-y sort of music, which is amazing. So if you've got a chance, the link will be in the description, and we'll also, if you want to go follow her on Twitter, her Twitter handle is freefade_music, and you can get all the good music that she's releasing there. A lot of you may know the previous song Wrexham to Win, which makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It's
absolute
epic.
banger. Banger.
This one's a new release, so we've got an exclusive for you. It's this one is called Wrexham We Sing Your Name by Free Fade, featuring Cal Joseph. So without further ado, Adrian, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Enjoy the music, guys, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Talk of the town with pride. We wear our badge, we wear our crown. We'll never stop. We'll fight until we reach the very top. Can you feel that mighty force pulsating through the race course? Wrexham, we sing your name, shout it loud, then we sing it again. Dragons, the team in red, unstoppable, playing our best. Wrexham, we sing your name, storming the league like a hurricane. Dragons, the team in red, spirits soaring as we march ahead. Fire burning bright, the hearts of dragons beat into the night. Can you feel that mighty force pulsating through the race course? Wrexham, we sing your name, shout it loud, then we sing it again. Dragons, the team in red, unstoppable, playing our best. Wrexham, we sing your name, storming the league like a hurricane. Dragons, the team in red, spirits soaring as we march ahead. Can you feel that mighty force pulsating through the race course? Wrexham, we sing your name, shout it loud, then we sing it again. Dragons, the team in red, unstoppable, playing our best. Wrexham, we sing your name, storming the league like a hurricane. Dragons, the team in red, spirits soaring as we march ahead.